This is War History News. My name is Wynn, and today we're going to cover the story about the Tupac Rebellion. Now, what was the Tupac Rebellion? The rebellion started because Tupac wanted to overthrow the Spanish colonialism in Peru, and because of the increasing rate of Spanish taxes and the rise and abuse of Spanish authority. Now, the background of Tupac. About Tupac, whose original name was Jose Gabriel, was born in the year of 1742 in Su Hermana, Tangasuca, in the province of Cusco. He was also a member of the Inca royal family and spent his years growing up in the Incan convent Wilcabamba, which was the original and religious university of the Incas, and the Incas mainly believes in multiple gods such as the creator god named Viracocha and Apu Ilapu, the rain god. After his father's death at age 12, he was raised by his uncle and aunt and later received a Jesuit education at the San Francisco de Borgia School. Now back to you.
For centuries, countries and even people have struggled over government authority as they continuously fight over who should be in power, constantly slaying each other over a throne. Even now you have presidents as nations, just like in medieval times when they really took power to the king, literally. Not only was hundreds of kings slain over a throne, but it immediately meant that you automatically took over whatever the king left behind. Therefore, people who had the position of the king had the power over the people and the countries which it already ruled. Many kings back then were violent, always wanted more land and power, causing the people to be tiresome of the kings, and in return, the kings fed off the economy and other countries which had already consumed, which is one of the many reasons which causes rebellion. Two of the main ones which can be seen repeated time and time again in history is political unrest and discrimination. In this case, it was political unrest where the government was constantly raising taxes and abusing their power.
Now let's take a look into the history of Peru, which is a South American country with a population of over 33 million people along the central western coast facing the Pacific Ocean. It is centered in the southern hemisphere and south of the equator. Countries that border it include Ecuador and Colombia. Peru was also under the rule of Incan Empire, which lasted until the 1438.
To add on to that, the rebellion took place in South Peru and it occurred on the time period of November 4, 1780 and March 15, 1738. The main spark of the rebellion was when Tupac sought out and killed local authority Antonio Arrega, which led to gathering more people and kill more corridos. They began to recruit different ethnic groups and people such as the Creoles, Mesos, and Quechas, blacks, and good Spaniards. This led to an alliance with the Quechua and Meso rebels aimed to overthrow the Spanish colonial rule in Peru, and they formed an organization of armed resistance against the Spanish colonists.
Did you know the rebellion also allied with the Catarista, which is known as the Upper Bolivia during the war? Tupac Kateri, Thomas Kateri Cristobal Tupac, and others also led the war, but the main leader was Tupac Amaru, who was a king and led the Andean rebellion. They organized the rebellion to be centered around Lake Titicaca, Peru, and Bolivia. Surprisingly, Tupac Amaru didn't trust his allies. Most alliances during the war or times of conquest didn't trust each other at the time, which helped create a defensive mechanism in case the alliance may try to turn on them.
Have you ever wondered if his family was involved in the war? Well, Tupac's wife was also involved in the rebellion, along with some of his family members as well. They played a major part in the rebellion by aiding them with supplies, recruitment, and even in decision making. This helped greatly because it's what allowed Tupac to venture into the other countries and find soldiers. Because he was a king, this displayed a sense of trust and credibility, and the people followed him with no questions asked. In return, he promised the abolition of taxes, customs, and mandatory public service that was once used by the Incas and adapted by the Spaniards. The rebellion ended up being very violent, and they killed any person who dressed as European or looked Spanish. In result, about 100,000 people were killed. The results took place in what were known as Puno, Bolivia, and northern Argentina.
In the result of the failure of this rebellion, it led to the opposition of the Army of Bonds. Let's take a look into this. During the rebellion, Tupac's goal was to take Creoles, blacks, and mestizos into an anti-colonial front against the Spaniards. Yet this did not work out well because he could not stop the spread of the war, becoming a racial struggle against Spaniards and Creoles and the vice royalty. The Creoles did not show any antagonism with the Spaniards. Instead, they demonstrated opposition to the Bourbon reforms, but they stayed faithful for anything else spreading or regarding of the crown.
If you are uncertain of what Bourbon reforms were during this time, it was when the crowd pursued straight predominance over the Catholic Church and placed economic reforms and placed power solely in the hands of civil officials. This resulted in the restructuring of administrative structure and personnel. The reforms sought to increase commercial, agriculture, and mining and increase trade. Furthermore, the Bourbon reforms were intended to limit the power of the Creoles and reestablish peninsular supremacy over the colonies.
As we are closing, the revolt ultimately failed and the King Tupac Amaru was known as a political figure for the independence of the Incas. Although he may be known for this, he actually started the rebellion in his own interest, which was to stop the increasing growing rate of the Spanish taxes.
Ever heard of the phrase power to the people? Well, this phrase was the reason for the end of the Tupac rebellion. One of the main causes of the rebellion failed was because they did not have enough public support to win the war. Without people, any war, protest, or reform is inevitably lost. This led to the Spanish killing of over 100 people with firepower alone.
During this time of the rebellion, it came to an end when they tried to take over Cusco. This led to the division in the army, which when one person tried to go fight and the other went back to Tarta to gather supplies. Because of the rising tensions which Cusco faced from the upcoming war, they decided that the company, which was made by the Indians in Cusco, could not leave the city. In order to prevent Tupac from recruiting more members, Tupac used his knowledge of the mountains to help his army pave their way to Cusco. They made it to the surroundings of Cusco and surprised the people, yet it did not go as planned because he was unsuccessful in the recruitment of more people. So instead, he waited for more troops to aid them, and they waited it out. The Spanish army began to quickly form at this time.
In the end, Tupac chose not to overtake Cusco despite his overwhelming army, because over time the supplies began to wane and the people grew tiresome. In the end, Tupac lost hope and believed that it would be impossible to attack Cusco, and that his people had forsaken him, saying that they had no salary once they survived. The conditions began to worsen and suffered extreme conditions of overcrowding. At this moment, he knew it was over, and he decided to withdraw. Around 3 months later, the war still continued, but the Spanish got the upper hand, which resulted in the capture of Tupac.
At the end of his journey, he was tortured and forced to give information about his army. He was in prison for a week, and in his time in there, he was constantly asked for information, and he did not comply, which led to his execution, which was caused by King Louis III and the ruler of Spain. They did not take his non-cooperation lightly, which led to the decapitation and mutilation of his body, as well as other vicious acts.
After everything to death, it always led to the death of his family, friends, or allies in order to prevent another uprising. After his execution, Tupac's friends and allies were killed later on, but one of them survived, which was Christopher Tupac, who led another uprising in the year of December with Qatari, and the other remaining rebellion forces who survived the capture of Tupac are missing.